Hey there YouTube, welcome back to Stav's channel, She Equips Herself. I have once again hijacked Stav's equipment with her blessing, and thank you very much, Stav, because I just wanted to do this video. And again, sometimes I just get an idea in my head and I kind of just like have to do it, and I bug her until she's like, just do the video, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do the video. So this video is going to be on the best home defense revolver. So I have a bunch of revolvers here I want to talk to you guys about, and incorporating a revolver into your home defense plan, and just see what goes from there. So let's get into it. So why a revolver? Even if you are a strict supporter of semi-automatics for various reasons, magazine capacity, one-hand operation, there's a lot of reasons why you can like semi-automatics better. Putting a flashlight on your gun, putting a red dot on your gun, magazine changes, quicker reload. There's a lot of reasons why you might like a semi-automatic. But my revolver people out there, you might still prefer a revolver. And that might be the number one. So the number one reason why you might want to have a revolver as part of your home defense plan is you simply prefer a revolver. For whatever reason, and I'm going to cover a lot of reasons why people in general like revolvers, but you just might like a revolver. Just to give you a little background on myself, I started shooting at a very young age. And when I was a young man and I would go shooting, and I'd probably go shooting about twice a month, at least twice a month, I'd say, with my father and my godfather and my cousins. It was a very normal, like we did it all the time. And so I was born in the mid-70s, so I was shooting in the early 80s, and revolvers were very much a common and popular firearm back then. And that was pretty much all I shot. Like my handgun shooting experience as a young man was almost all revolver. I shot many of these revolvers and all different types of revolvers all the time. So I established a comfort level and a capability with revolvers because we just weren't really a semi-automatic handgun family at the time. So I just had a lot of experience on revolvers. My father has always been a revolver man, and to this day prefers revolvers. And he just prefers them because those are the guns he likes to shoot. Those are the guns that he feels most confident and comfortable with. Therefore, he just likes a revolver. So you just might have a whole bunch of your own reasons why you prefer a revolver. And if that's the case, I don't think you should be ashamed of it. I don't think you should force yourself into a semi-automatic. If you like revolvers, then I think revolvers are a good tool, and we'll discuss some reasons why as we go. Number two, reliability. Revolvers are simply more reliable than semi-automatics, in my opinion, almost always across the board. And there are just definitely exceptions to this rule that I will discuss, but I have been a firearms instructor for my entire adult life. I started as a firearms instructor in the United States Marine Corps, so I was running the Beretta, if we want to just keep it in the handgun world, running the Beretta for every single range we did. I've been a police officer for 21 years. 20 of those years I've been a firearms instructor, so I ran all different types of handguns. When I was my first police department, we had Glock 22s, which is a 40 caliber Glock, and we had Glock 27s. Those were the two guns that department carried and issued, and they were great guns. They had very low amount of malfunctions, but we had malfunctions, mostly officer induced or person induced, but we had malfunctions. Then when I switched departments, I went to a Smith & Wesson M&P 45. We definitely had malfunctions with that gun. We switched from that gun to a Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 4-inch barrel 9mm. We've had malfunctions with that. I was a civilian firearms instructor for 12 years, and so I was running all different types of guns, and I saw every malfunction you can possibly imagine when I was running civilians through all different types of tactical schools and just basic shooting schools. In fact, when me and Stav would teach together, we used to make bets on how many malfunctions we were going to have that night. So malfunctions, whether it be induced by the person controlling the firearm or just the gun itself, they absolutely jam. They absolutely have problems, and without question, revolvers have less problems. So reliability might be one of your absolute paramount reasons, or why you might want a revolver, is you feel more confident that that gun is going to go bang when it is supposed to go bang, and that might be a very good reason why you like them. I will say this, you as a shooter can absolutely create malfunction after malfunction after malfunction with a revolver, and that's basically based on trigger control. All of these guns, by the way, are all unloaded, and when I pick them up, I'll show you the cylinders already real. If you pull the trigger on a revolver and you don't release it all the way, and you try to pull the trigger again, so you release right about, let me see if I get my first click. Right about there it is. I'm pulling. Now I'm pulling. Like, that's as hard as I can pull, and you can see nothing's happening. So I'm providing tension. You can see in my fingernail and on the top of my hand that I'm pulling that right there. But the gun is doing nothing. In order for me to shoot this gun, I have to now come out, and then I can shoot. Bang, and you can see the cylinder moving. So that locks it up, and under stress, that can really screw you up. If I don't release it even to that first click where it locks up, and I just go out like to here, and I pull the trigger again, nothing happens. You can see the cylinder's not moving, the hammer's not moving. Nothing's happening. And you want the gun to go bang, and then it's not going bang. And you saw just now, I got that cylinder to move without it going click. So I got that cylinder, see if I can get it again for you. I'm trying to, oh, I got it locked up. There it goes, moves. Your trigger finger and how you're going back and forth, especially when you're in a rush and you're trying to shoot fast, you can cause malfunctions. And I had one student in my class years ago that kept skipping. He would pull the trigger to make the cylinder move, but then he would release his trigger finger. So essentially when he was shooting, he'd pull the trigger like this and wouldn't make the gun go up. And then he'd come down and he'd do this, and you could see the cylinders moving. And he would go to the next round. So he'd only get 4 or 5 shots per cylinder because he would be skipping rounds. Because he just got fatigued. He just couldn't pull the trigger all the way to the rear. So you can cause all sorts of malfunctions. But mechanically speaking, the reliability of the revolver is very strong. When I went to Smith & Wesson Firearms Instructor School for police officers back in 2005 is when I did that, we had 5 days of semi-automatic handguns, then we had 3 days of revolvers, and then we had 2 days of shotguns. Rifles weren't even on the board back then. It wasn't really like, police were just starting to get rifles in our area. But I remember the instructor saying, who, at the end of the 5 days of semi-automatic, he said, who hasn't had a malfunction this week? And everybody's hand went up. And he said, okay, when you come back on Monday, we're going to talk about that again. Went through the weekend, came back on Monday, we started shooting revolvers. There was a lot of learning in the first day, which was Monday. But by Tuesday and Wednesday, that whole line was running just pop, 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 no problems whatsoever. And at the end of Wednesday, the 3rd day with revolver, the instructor was like, who had a malfunction today? No one's hand goes up. Who had a malfunction yesterday? No one's hand goes up. And then, because he was an older guy and he really liked revolvers too. But if you have people that know how to shoot, that gun, the revolver, just shoots and shoots and shoots and shoots and shoots. And you'll always have semi-automatic malfunctions. I'm, running Marines, running SWAT officers, running police officers, running high echelon performers like firearms instructors. I used to do that for the state as well, where I was teaching other officers to be firearms instructors. And we always have malfunctions with semi-automatic. Always, always, always. So reliability is absolutely there for revolvers, and that might be a major concern of yours. Number 3 is safety. I'm going to give you a list. I'm going to tell you all of the negligent discharges or accidents that I have either been directly firsthand involved, like standing there when this happened so I can tell you exactly what occurred, or I spoke to the person that did it. So it's, I don't know, first-hand knowledge plus just, I guess, second-hand knowledge, I guess, or 1.5 times knowledge. But when I was a Marine, there was 2 negligent discharges in my career with the Beretta. One was a fatality, and it was basically people shooting, the Marines shooting themselves with their handgun by mistake. So that's the Beretta, that's a semi-automatic handgun. When I was a SWAT operator, the 6 years I was a SWAT operator, there were 2 negligent discharges with semi-automatic. I think they were both Glocks. One went into an officer's leg, and one went through the floorboard of his vehicle. Both of those semi-automatic handguns. We had a accident. I was not at the range for this. I got this second from the people that were there. But there was a accident at a Massachusetts gun range for police officers trying to become instructors, where an officer was shot by another instructor. And that was done with a Glock. So another semi-automatic negligent discharge. One time I had a friend over and I was in my own kitchen, and that friend decided they wanted to do something with their gun, and they shot a hole through my kitchen table. That was a negligent discharge with a Smith & Wesson Shield. There was another time I was cleaning guns with a friend, and during the cleaning and correcting and cleaning and reassembling and disassembling of the firearm, my friend shot a round into a water pipe. That was with a Glock 26. That's another semi-automatic. when a new officer came on board for one of my police departments. They issued him a Glock. He was previously carrying a SIG, and they were talking about the gun, and for some reason this officer drew the gun and pulled the trigger because they were talking about trigger control or the difference between the trigger and the Glock and the SIG, and he just had an absolute brain fart and pulled the trigger and shot around in the wall. So that was another negligent discharge with a Glock. One time there was another firearms instructor that I knew that was gassing up his vehicle at the end of a shift, and he was practicing his draw, and during one of his draw cycles he drew his firearm and shot around in the salt shed for the town for salting the roads. That was another negligent discharge with a Glock. When I was working at a firearms school, an individual had a firearm, had a semi-automatic, and just so we know, this is empty, we're good to go. Take out the magazine too. Some people, for some reason, with semi-automatics like to grab the front and pull it to the rear like that. And even if they grab the back and they pull it like this, and you can see where my barrel is pointing when I do that. Like, I've never thought that was an acceptable thing, to put your elbow out and like do one of these. But people do it, and he shot around right through here and and screwed up his arm there. So those are all the accidents that I was either right there, or I was like in the next room and ran over to like administer medical aid and got the story directly of what just happened. So every single negligent discharge that I've ever been involved in has been with a semi-automatic handgun. I can't think of any with rifles, I can't think of any with shotguns, and I can't think of any with revolvers. Now, the possible answer to that is semi-automatic handguns are by far the most common. So that might be the reason, but I feel like there's still a little bit more to the puzzle here than just how often people are carrying them. So I don't know of anybody, I can't tell you a story of someone negligently making their revolver go bang. You know, they're quite safe, and people are safe with them. So that's some real good things. Couple things with a revolver I always like to demo, because people get a little bit freaked out about there not being a safety on a revolver, because you can't see it. There's not a switch that goes safe or fire. But revolvers, a modern revolver, this revolver was made in the early 80s, so it's in the modern revolver, but they're even more modern now. But what I'm going to show you is this firing pin right here, just sitting right there. Let me see if I can get it for you. All right, that's what hits the back of the primer and makes the cartridge ignite and sends the bullet out of the barrel. So we have that going. If I take a pencil, I cock that hammer, and I take a pencil and I drop it down the barrel, when I pull the trigger, that firing pin is going to hit the back of that pencil and shoot that pencil up in the air. All right? So we know that that works. Now, if I do the same thing, I now hold the hammer to the rear. Now I'm holding that spring. I'm holding that spring tension. My finger is now off the trigger, but I'm holding all that spring tension with my thumb. If I let that hammer go, that pencil's not going to move. And the reason why that pencil did not move is because you have to have your finger on the trigger the entire time the hammer is moving, all the way till it comes to a rest, in order to make that firearm go bang. If your finger is not on the trigger, the hammer cannot go forward enough to have the firing pin hit the primer and make the gun go bang. So there's an internal safety here that if you don't pull the trigger, the gun won't go bang. And it's very reliable and it's very well proven. You cannot make this hammer go forward and get that firing pin to come out unless you pull the trigger. And you can see that the hammer is resting now in its forward position. As I release the trigger, watch it come back. And that's where it is. You can't make it go forward. The only way to make it go forward is to pull the trigger, and then it's resting all the way down. Watch the hammer come back. As I take my finger off the trigger, that pushes the hammer back and it can't go forward. So internal safeties on a revolver, and there's a much heavier trigger. Generally, a revolver trigger is a lot heavier than a semi-automatic trigger. So there's less likely a chance to make it go bang by a mistake. So safety is an absolute reason you might like revolvers as part of your home defense plan. Longevity. If you load a revolver and you store it in your safe, you really don't have to worry about that gun for years upon years upon years. All the springs on a revolver are relaxed when it's in storage mode. When it's fully loaded, you put it away, all the springs are relaxed. That's fine. When you take a semi-automatic and you are now going to store that firearm for a home defense situation. First thing is you're going to load your magazine, which is going to compress the spring all the way to the bottom. So if this is a fully loaded magazine, the spring is fully compressed. So that spring is under tension the whole time. Now, many people will tell you you don't have to worry about that and that those springs can stay compressed for like eternity. I have not found that to be the case in my shooting career. I have definitely felt my springs get weaker from use, and if I have them loaded for a long period of time, they definitely feel weaker to me, and I've noticed problems on my very last round of it not pushing the bullet all the way up so it can chamber correctly. So I do feel like your springs wear out on your magazine, and it's something you need to be aware of. The other thing you should know is when you send your slide forward, you put your magazine and you send your slide forward, your trigger is now in a potentially half-cocked or cocked position on most striker-fired firearms. If this was a double action or a double action only or a double action, single action semi-automatic, you can put the hammer down and that's pretty fine for storage. But all your striker-fired, your hammer, your striker is kind of in limbo. It's under some spring tension. And in the military, whenever we were going to store our firearms for any type of time, you would hand them in, they'd get inspected, and you'd always see the armorer basically double check your firearm and take the weapon, put it on fire, and dry fire it so that all the springs are relaxed, and then they would store. So if you're storing a semi-automatic handgun, you have a firing pin that's under some type of compression, you have a full magazine most likely that's under some type of compression, and I don't know how long everything's going to last without any type of care or consideration. It may be many, many years. I don't think it's something you should be freaking out about. But what I can tell you is if you're the type of person that's not going to shoot and train on a regular basis and you just want to have a loaded gun in the house in a safe in case you need it, revolver might be a good choice for it. It might be. It depends on a lot of different things. But they do last for a very long time and you don't have to mess with them. Is 6, 7, or 8 rounds enough firepower for a home defense situation? I think that would be a big discussion that you need to have with yourself as far as how you feel. I personally feel like 6, 7, and 8 rounds of inside a handgun is enough for a home defense situation. But then again, my entire home defense plan, and hopefully you've heard me say this before, is that a handgun is light and it's small and it's readily available, and that's why they're so helpful for home defense. But I truly feel like a long gun is always a better choice if you actually think that someone's life is truly on the line and you need to use a firearm to defend yourself or defend someone else. I'd much rather you have a shotgun or a rifle. So when I kind of think about revolvers as being part of a home defense plan, it's kind of part of the home defense plan. It's perhaps the first gun you grab when you're on your way to get a better gun because it's small, it's light, it's readily available, it's in a nice safe, and it's close to you. So 6, 7, 8 rounds of ammunition, which is what all the revolvers I have here, yeah, that might absolutely be enough in a home defense situation because you might have more firearms. If it's your only firearm, yeah, now that's a much more of a topic of conversation. If you believe that you'd rather have more rounds, that's fine. That might be, is more rounds more important than some of the other things we talked about? Safety is really important to some people. Reliability is really important to some people. If you live in a state that only allows 10 rounds anyways, and you have an 8-round revolver, you're not talking about a tremendous handicap going from one to the other. Reloading is another topic. We can talk about that later, but there's a lot of times you probably are, if you look at most home defense situations, I would say 6, 7, and 8 rounds, if they're used properly, are enough. So it's up to you to decide. The manual of arms. If you just like the way a revolver loads, the way it unloads, how simple it is, and that's just your comfort level, fine. I've seen so many people in my shooting career have trouble loading magazines, have trouble loading like the last round in their magazine, have trouble racking the slide. Stav's #1 video of all time is racking the slide. I think that's the title of it. I'll have her put it like right here. But the racking the slide. And the reason why it's such a popular video is because people have trouble racking the slide. And I can remember vividly so many times in my life when I was teaching a new student, just putting rounds in the cylinder revolver, closing it and being like, okay, let's shoot. And them saying, oh, that's it? Like that's as easy as it is? Yeah, you just put rounds in the cylinder, close the cylinder, and we can go play. So that manual of arms, that capability of loading and unloading your own gun and not being worried about it, not being scared of that slide, not being scared that you might not be able to load magazines or unload magazines, that matters. It matters to some people. So the manual of arms, the way they load and unload, and that might really make people more comfortable as far as that firearm. Comfort. I mean, I grew up on revolvers. I love revolvers. I love the way they feel in my hand. I love the way they look. But one thing about a revolver is there's a never-ending supply of different grips, and you can absolutely find a grip that agrees with your hand on a revolver you already own or any revolver you're looking at. You can change so much about how a revolver feels in your hand, and I would say that although you can change some grips on semi-automatics, and newer semi-automatics are coming with different back plates, stuff like this is a perfect example. If I needed to change the way this part of the gun felt, I can take this out and I can get a different one of these that'll help the gun fit. But that's about all I can do with this handgun. There's not a tremendous amount of capability that I can change on this semi-automatic. But with a revolver, there's like a never-ending supply of different grips you can go with. So getting that gun to fit really comfortable in your hand, especially if you already own the gun or if it was given to you, you can absolutely do it. And that might matter to you, the comfort of how it feels in its hand. Another thing that I just experienced, me and Stav just recently went to Connecticut. And when we were going to Connecticut, I had to think, okay, Connecticut, what am I allowed to bring firearms-wise? I know they're like Massachusetts where we live, where you can only have 10 rounds. Now, I'm a police officer in Massachusetts, which means we have a law enforcement exemption. So when I'm in Massachusetts, I can carry 15-round mags, 20-round mags, whatever. Now, I can do that when carrying in my state. But the second I leave Massachusetts, I am now subject to whatever state those laws are for your citizen. When police officers, and some police officers don't know this, but when you leave your state and you're going to carry, because we can carry in all 50 states with our police ID, but when you're carrying in those states, you are not under your law enforcement exemption credentials. Your law enforcement ID is just a license to carry for the state you're going to. So you are subject to their laws and their rules for every citizen, not for police. So I'm going to Connecticut, I can't bring any high capacity magazines. So I had to make sure I thought about that so I wouldn't be traveling or in that state illegally. Well, when you have a revolver or you use a revolver for carry, or when you use a revolver for any type of defense or like home defense or whatever, they're always legal. In all 50 states, there's nothing on revolvers. They're 8 shots or less, so they're never going over the 10 round limit. I mean, you can get a 10 round 22, I guess, but still, I can't think of too many revolvers. Maybe there's a couple, but that have more than 10 shots, and those are probably target revolvers, and 22, they're not really defensive revolvers. But for the most part, if you own a revolver and you're leaving your state, you're going somewhere else, it's legal. And if your state is like my state, where the gun laws are always changing, you can be fairly certain that your revolver is going to be one of the last things that ever gets changed. It's like always going to be legal in theory. As long as guns are legal, your revolver is probably legal. So as far as that kind of craziness really is much easier to track because your revolver is good. Some people really like the single action capability of a revolver too. They love it. I know that I see it all the time at the range. They love to shoot single action, and it's just enjoyable. So having the capability of shooting double action and single action, it like makes people happy. It inspires confidence, and they like it. They just like it. So when you have both, I don't know, if they just prefer a double action and then a single action so that they can cock it or they can not cock it, people like that. And that might not have anything to do with home defense, but people like it, and that might be a reason why. So the overall kind of theme in what I believe is, if you are a person who, number one, either likes revolvers or is trying to figure out what they're going to do in their shooting world, and they're thinking about home defense, and you know that you are not going to be a type of person that's going to train often, going to be like kind of become a gun person and, you know, really get involved in the gun world, and you're just thinking, okay, listen, here's what I want. I want to have a gun. I want to have a gun in the house just in case. I'm not going to start going to the range. I don't really think I'm going to join a gun club. Maybe once a year I'll go to the range just to shoot, but I just want to have a gun in the house. That's really what I want, and I don't want to get wrapped up in the gun world. I think a revolver is an excellent choice for someone with that agenda, someone with that plan. Okay, So here's what I did. I decided that I wanted to figure out what the best home defense revolver would be. So I went to the range, I set up 2 targets, and I put them at 6 yards away. I couldn't decide if I was going to do 7 yards or 5 yards, but I just put 2 targets, 2 rounds into the first target, inside the green circle on the target, and then transition to the other target, which is right next to it, and put 2 rounds into that target. And I was going to time that to see how long it would take me to get 2 hits, and then I was going to do that twice, and then record both times, and then find the average in between them. Then what I would do is I would back up to the 10-yard line and make a single headshot on each target, just to make sure I could make a single headshot. And I was looking at the distances I have in my house and the distances of most houses, and I felt like, all right, 6 yards, dealing with 2 attackers, putting 2 rounds in each of them, that's, I think, pretty good. I thought that was a relatively good judge of distance and speed and being able to transition from target to target. And then just to make it kind of harder, trying to make like a headshot at 10 yards, possibly like a hostage rescue shot. That's why I backed up to 10 to see if I can put them all in the head at 10. So that is what I did, and I'm going to share with you the scores. So if you're not into hearing like numbers and scores in each individual gun I shot, you can fast forward to the end and I'll close this out. But if you're into guns and you want to hear how each one of these revolvers did, here we go. All right, so the very first gun that I shot, the reason why I shot this gun is because I feel like it was an unfair advantage. When I held this gun and when I dry fired this gun, I was like, this gun's gonna win. Like, I don't know how it's not gonna win. It just seems so good compared to it was the best, like without question, it's the best revolver on the table, probably right now too, even if they shot them all. So I was like, okay, here's the fairest thing. I will shoot that gun first to handicap it, because I know after I do this 10, 15 times, I'm going to start to get progressively better at it. So I'll start with the best gun to try to level off the playing field. So I used this 627, Smith & Wesson 627. It is an 8-shot revolver. It has a compensator. It has a fiber optic sight. The trigger has just been polished and is just crazy smooth and fast and amazing. It's a 357 Magnum or a 38. And by the way, I shot everything in both calibers so that it would be fair. So I shot this in 38 and I shot it in 357 and I scored the thing. So this gun was not the winner, probably because I went first, but I shot it and I got a 2.38 on the first time and then a 2.24 on the second time, and my average there was 2.31, and that was on this. Then I did it with 357 Magnum loads, and I shot a 2.49 and a 2.29, and then my average there was 2.39. By the way, this was the winner with 357 Magnums. It was not the winner with 38 Specials. But it's an expensive gun, but it is a dream to shoot. Absolutely fantastic. If you have your chance to get your hands on one of those, do it right away. Like if I see one of those that's available and it's priced even remotely okay, it's coming home with me. The next gun I shot, which I thought had a really good chance of winning this competition, was the Model 25. All right, this is a 45 ACP revolver. It shoots 45 automatic co-pistol rounds on moon clip, and I thought this guy, because it has a 6.5-inch barrel, it doesn't recoil much in 45. I really thought that this was, was a contender to win. Love the look of it, love the feel of it. I shot a 2.49 and a 2.29 for a combined score, a 2.71 and a 2.24 for a combined score of 2.605. It did not win, but wow, it is an accurate gun. I really liked that gun, but it did not win. Next one I did was the 586, the Smith & Wesson 586, which is a 6-shot 357 Magnum. Another fantastic gun. This is kind of a winner, because we'll get back to this one after, but it didn't actually win 38 or 357 Magnum. This was a 2.23 and a 2.29 for a combined of a 2.26 score. And when I shot it with 357 Magnums, it was a 2.4 and then a 2.48, which was a combined 2.44. So it's very respectable. It did great, easy to shoot, but it did not win. The next one I shot was just a 38 Special. This is not a 357 Magnum, and this is a Model 14, and it's a target pistol. So I thought this might not be fair because it's designed just for targets, but it didn't win. And I was shocked that it didn't perform a little better than it did. It is a absolute nail driver in single action mode, but it just didn't, I don't know, maybe it was just I didn't shoot it that good. But So I shot a 2.20 and then a 2.38, which is a combined for 2.29. So good gun, definitely like it, but it was not the winner. The next thing I went to is going to be the Model 10. And I tell you what, these, if you get your hands to get a used Model 10, especially a pre-lock, do it. You won't be disappointed. They're outstanding. I have a 10 and a 64, which is basically the same gun, one in stainless, one in blue. But the Model 10 with 2.31 and 2.41, which are combined for 2.36. This is 38 special only. It did not win, but that's a great gun. Then I shot the Model 28, Smith & Wesson Model 28, kind of the original 357 Magnum. This one I shot in 38 and 357 Magnum. For 38 special is a 2.50 and a 2.44, which led me into a 2.47. And then with 357 Magnums, it was a 2.46 and a 2.80, which is a combine of 2.63. It didn't win either caliber. Big, heavy. I mean, look at the distance in between the rounds. Look how much meat and how much metal there are in between the rounds in that cylinder. There's just a lot. Very beefy gun. Handles 357 Magnums just as great as you could possibly imagine because it's so big and heavy. Moved on now to the Model 24, which is only a 44 special revolver. 6-shot 44 special. 2.46 and 2.80 for a combined of 2.63. 44 special, very expensive to shoot, hard to get rounds for these days. Not necessarily highly recommended, but ballistically good. I mean, a 44 special works really well. It's like a 45 ACP. It's in that world. For home defense, I'd say that's a fine caliber. If you're a big bullet person, 44 special might work really well. 38, 357 Magnum are kind of the dominant, and it's where I'm most comfortable as well. But we had some big bores here too. Speaking of that, this is actually what I wanted to win. I wanted this gun to win because it's relatively new to us. It's a Model 29 6.5 Classic. This is Dirty Harry's gun. This is a new version. It's not the original version, but I grew up with this gun. Like I loved the Model 29 since I was a little kid. Maybe Stav can put a picture of me right here. This is like, I don't know, I'm like 5 or 6 years old, and that gun I'm holding is a Model 29 squirt gun. And I've just always loved this gun, so I finally got my hands on one, and I couldn't be happier with it. It shoots great. So it shoots 44 Special and 44 Magnum, so I did it with both. And you know, my bias, me wanting this to win, wasn't enough for it to actually win. The Model 29 in 44 Special was a 2.52 and a 2.46, which combined to 2.49. And in 44 Magnum, it was 3.49 and 3.10, which was 3.295. That was the slowest I was on the entire thing because those 44 Magnums go off with quite a wallop and you got to steer the gun back at the target. I was kind of just happy I was able to do it. You know, shooting that fast on a target, an 8-inch plate kind of, I was happy that it worked out, but it's not super fast. We went on to the Model 19 Carry Comp, Smith & Wesson's Model 19 Carry Comp. This is a performance center gun, and it's I will say that it leaves a little to be desired here. Like, you think you got a performance center gun and this is just going to crush it. It's got a compensator in it. The compensator works a little bit. It does make the gun more comfortable, but I'm just not crazy about it, especially when you compare it to what we're going to talk about in a few minutes, which is just a straight 686 plus. I find that to be better than this. I had high hopes for this gun, but it didn't win either category either. It's a 6-shot Model 19 Carry Comp, and that was 2.48 and 2.25 for a combined of, I'm sorry, I'm getting that, 2.48 and 2.63 for a combined 2.55 time. Then I did it with 357 Magnums, 2.75, 2.25 for a combined 2.50. If you're a big 357 Magnum person, that's your caliber, and you want a relatively small gun that handles it well, you put that rubber grip on this gun and it's got the compensator, this gun might be for you. But there's other guns out there, and for home defense, you don't really have to conceal anything, so you can just get a slightly bigger gun, like that 586. And I think that you would be better served. You'd spend less money, and you'd be better served than dropping down to the Carry Comp 3-inch, spending more money, and, you know, it's whatever you like kind of thing. All right, then let's see what we had next. We did the Model 64, just a 38 special. This is the one I just used for the pencil, and this gun did pretty well. This was a 2.30 and a 2.19 for a combined 2.245. That was I was happy with that. And then I got into this little guy. This is a 686 Plus. This is a great shooter. This is the 3-inch barrel. I'm sure the 4-inch barrel shoots great as well. These are under $1,000 for Smith & Wesson, and they are fantastic. Every single 586 or 686 I've got my hands on has been an absolute great shooter. It's a non-performance center gun. It's just a straight off the rack gun. And in my opinion, it's every bit as good as the carry comp, if not better. It's a 7-shot revolver. This would probably be one of my top recommendations if you're looking for a revolver that you want for home defense. Maybe you might want to carry it, so you might want the slightly smaller size. But 7 shots is better than 6. It's in a nice size package. It's beautiful to look at, and it shoots awesome. I mean, this almost got it. This almost got it. So the 686 Plus with 38 Special was a 2.17 and a 2.03, which was a combination of 2.10, which is the best score that I had. Now, I'm going down the list in the same exact order I shot them, so I was getting better. So you can do the math for yourself. I might be giving it an unfair advantage, but this is a fantastic gun. Way to go, Smith, on the 686 Pluses that you're still putting out of your factory right now, because that gun is a good gun, a very good representation of Smith & Wesson. I don't know about that carry comp still. All right, so then I switched and I went to the Cobra series that I have. So I'm sorry, the Colt series that I have. So the first one I shot was the Cobra, and this is a little small. I wouldn't really recommend this for home defense. I like bigger guns when you don't have to conceal them. But I wanted at least one small gun in the mix. So the Colt Cobra with 38 specials, I did a 2.38 and a 2.77, which was a combined 2.575. And I wasn't unhappy with that, but it just wouldn't be my recommendation for home defense if you have a larger revolver, because they just handle those self-defense loads a little bit better. So then the next one I went and this was, if the Model 29 didn't win, this was the one I wanted to win. So I'm biased against this. I actually thought the 627 was going to win, but I really wanted this gun to win. And at this point, I had run out of 357 Magnum ammunition, so I could only do this gun with 38, so I can only present it to you with 38. So I did my 6-inch Colt Python, and this is from the late 80s. It is not one of their new models. And I ran a 2.16 and a 1.90 for a combined score of 2.03, which was the fastest that I was able to do on the day. So the Colt Python 6-inch stainless steel in 38 Special was the winner for my speed, shooting 2 shots in each target with a 2.03. I didn't get to do it in 357 Magnum. I will try to get that done and present it on another video that Stav's doing in the future. But I also shot my 4-inch Colt Python. This is from the early 80s. Well, again, not one of the new ones. And I was able to shoot that with 38 Special only. And with the 4-inch, I did a 2.27 and a 2.05 for a combination of 2.16. So both Pythons did really well in this. And then the absolute kind of last entry that I got it from a friend who knew I was going to the range and shooting a whole ton of revolvers. And he said, what do you think about using my 929, which is a 9mm 8-shot revolver? And I said, oh man, I don't really know much about that gun. That's something different. And I can tell you that if you're in the market for a 9mm revolver, or if you've never even thought about it, look at this gun. This thing was an absolute dream to shoot. It's got a nice fiber optic sight. It goes with moon clips, so it reloads real fast. And boy, does it have a great trigger on it. And I was able to run that at 2.13 and 2.10 for a combined of 2.115. All these numbers kind of showed me one thing, by the way. So when I looked at all these numbers, even though the Python won in 38 Special and the 627 won in 357 Magnum, they were all so damn close, I don't think it really matters. I was able to engage one target with 2 rounds and then transition and hit another target with 2 rounds. I was able to keep it in an 8-inch circle at 6 yards every single time, and everything was sub 3.5 seconds. And we were really splitting hairs here with microseconds. So the fastest one was 2.03. And like my slowest one was like 3 seconds, you know, when it comes to 38 Special or high 2s. I mean, my 44 Magnum was 3.295, and that was the absolute slowest. So any revolver, if I picked any one of these and went to the range and did that drill 10 times in a row, I feel like I could now beat my highest score with that gun. Every single one of these guns has the capability of winning. So whichever one you end up either already owning and figuring out if you're going to use it or not, or you're going to go out and buy one, practice and you're going to get in there. The point is, you're going to be very capable of defending yourself against 2 attackers very easily with a revolver, and that might be something that you might want as far as your home defense plan. So if you're tuning back in and you didn't want to hear any of those numbers, I just wanted to throw this at you. If you already own a revolver and you think like it's too archaic or too old to be part of your home defense plan, that's not true. If you have people in your house that feel more comfortable with a revolver, if you feel more comfortable with a revolver, don't shy away from including it in your home defense plan. They're absolutely still viable tools, and they have a lot of good reasons why they still work, and you can still go out to the store and buy a revolver. They're not gone. They're not gone. They're hanging on, and they're hanging on for some good reasons. So, thanks for tuning in. I hope this didn't bore you too much. If you're a numbers person like me, I hope I gave you some good numbers that you liked. If you have any questions about any one of these guns, just post in the comments and I'll do my best to answer it for you. And I'll probably be long-winded because I truly enjoy revolvers, so I'll probably give you a long-winded answer. So thanks for tuning in. Keep an eye out for Stav's next video. Stay safe. Bye.